Fable. Ah, yes, that game. The one with all the magic and fighting and shooting. The one set in Albion. Well, ancient Albion. No, not that one. I mean, Albion, the magical place that is based on Great Britain, but is most definitely not set in Britain. Despite having English accents, English jokes, and a general feeling of being in Britain. The first Fable was released in 2004. It was just called Fable. The story should start there, but as with all things that change the way we play, it didn't. Fable and its first creator has a story to tell, one almost as grand and filled with potential as the heroes we play in the game. We, and when I say that, I mean gamers old enough to watch expos and stuff in 2001, were promised everything. An expansive world like no other. An RPG that would revolutionize what we understand as the RPG. The Fable games started and probably ended the career of Peter Molyneux. I mean, he's still making things, but I don't think really anybody pays much attention to that. Mostly because he overpromises and always underdelivers. Ironically, that is the opposite of some studios that we know. And we need to understand that as simple as Fable is and was, it still did some amazing things. So I would recommend sitting down, grabbing some coffee, and enjoying this short, not entirely short, look at all the Fable games. Fable 1, Fable The Lost Chapters or Fable Anniversary. This game is the one most people remember, because most people played this in some way or another. And if you are wondering, it got renamed because Lionhead Studios was left nearly bankrupt after the release of Fable 1. So, like is now normal, Microsoft signed a deal with them. Release Fable The Lost Chapters. We'll get into what that included later. But this is the one that achieved some critical success and basically gave enough momentum to the series for Fable 2 to start development. This game was something. It was a lot of things. It was also not a lot of things, because what I have to remember, even back then, railroading an RPG was seen as a relatively weird thing to do. So in a game that is supposed to revolutionize the RPG world has a completely railroaded story, it caused some outrage. This isn't to say the world wasn't a sandbox. It was more so than many others. It was just that in about 10 minutes you could go from one end of the map to the other without a problem. Or the fact that most of the map is locked behind story beats. Or that the progressing of the skills and weapons is also locked behind most story progress. Okay, let me be straight with you. This RPG is more about you playing the role of a specific hero, and your choices revolve around being good or evil. A choice which mostly affects who you can kill and whether you have a halo around your head or horns coming out of it. Also, can I just say that you can kill most people in this game, and my opinion would be, that's fair, but Whisper genuinely seems unfortunate. Also, don't kill your sister, you then lose access to Oversteer. Also, spoilers I guess. You know, it really doesn't matter too much. The RPG component of Fable is limited, as in you can pretend you are a hero in a fictional world, which is to say pretty fun at times, but also frustrating. You can get married, you can kick chickens, you can help an innocent woman get her inheritance from her dead husband. What you can't do is choose where the story goes. You can choose how it ends, but Fable 2 and 3 ignores that entirely as well. So ultimately, where was I going with this? I genuinely can't remember. Anyway, the Fable The Lost Chapters is the most popular version of the first Fable, with Fable Anniversary really being the only way we can still access these games. Since you know, it's still on Steam. With all of that said, I think I can finish things about the first Fable with a few final thoughts. It was a good game for its time, but it also wasn't. Visually, it was ahead of its time, but there were many components that were lacking. Chief of which is the character creator, something that no Fable game has ever had. Something that almost all modern RPGs have. In a way, that kind of makes it unique. But Fable 2 and Fable 3 would improve on the recipe of Fable, and also shows exactly how bad things can be in many different aspects. At the end of the day, Peter Molyneux promised us a Fable game that was supposed to be extremely revolutionary, changing the way we looked at RPGs in the gaming environment as we knew it. Instead, he gave a game that had a lot of good ideas, a lot of unique things to it, but underdelivered and oversold itself in almost every aspect that it could. Even with updates and a complete expansion that was actually called The Lost Chapters, the game was kind of lackluster even for its time. And if you were really fast, you could breeze through it within 5 hours from the start to the end of the game. Fable 2. What can I say? A game that looked good, a game that felt like it promised the world. The first game that I ever spent hours researching before buying it. The first game that had mini games and events across the internet that I actively partook in. The first game that when it launched disappointed me with so many things that I immediately didn't finish it. You see, I bought it on the Xbox 360. The same thing that happened with Fable 3 in fact. And let me tell you, if I had more games at that time, I would have played them. Sadly, I had finished almost every single other game there was. Released in 2008, this game had a trailer, on screen right now, that absolutely blew young Sock's pants off. Legitimately, this is still one of the best teaser trailers I remember from my teenage years, and the hype it created could be felt across the Fable community. Mostly because so much lore for the Fable world dropped that many of us nerds got infatuated with that alone. For example, to show how time progressed from the first to second game, they had these mini-games on the Lionhead Studios website. Each mini-game unlocked some lore that you could read. The ones that stood out the most to me were the tales of a hero with a family. At some point, evil heroes started outnumbering the good heroes, and someone actually killed an innocent civilian for walking into them. This sparked an outrage, and the civilians, starting at Power Stone, revolted. They attacked the heroes they saw and then went for the guild, the Heroes Guild, burning, torturing, and killing anyone they could find. So, the hero we are reading from luckily escaped this. Not being a strong hero, he wasn't even really at the guild when this happened. In the letters, we read of him running away. First to the outer reaches, I think somewhere like Oakvale, then further to Northwell Glade, then even further away than that. But he was always being chased. In the very last letter he sends, he actually swears that he sees the woman he loves, his wife, in the angry crowd of people literally tearing at wood to get to him. And that has so many implications. But it wasn't just as horrific and startling end to the Heroes Guild that drew my attention. It was the other history that we received. You see, at this point, all we really knew from the first Fable game about Avo and Jack of Blades is that one is good and one is ultimately bad. But the lore we received before the launch of Fable 2 told us exactly who and what they were. And let me tell you, nothing that was ever actually included in any of the games could compare. I don't know who wrote the lore for the Fable 2 and 3 games, but let me tell you, they were having the time of their lives. You see, we learned that the Archon, an ancient super strong hero, I think if I remember right, as well as Jack of Blades and a few other entities are from a different dimension. They crossed over into Albion eons and eons ago. They were the ancient civilization that we hear about in the first game. They built entire kingdoms, and in Fable 2, they were there before the spire that is ultimately the MacGuffin of the rest of the games was even built for the first time. You see, the humans that rose up to defeat the Archon, Jack of Blades, and other entities, They created the ancient civilization that built the Spire. And you wouldn't know this because honestly, Fable 2 and Fable 3 does an absolutely horrible job of explaining all of this. And I also kind of think it's because the writers of the main games themselves didn't write all of this flavorful text. So they probably didn't want to include it. But that brings us to what Fable 2 is. It is a game that takes place hundreds of years after the guild has gone. The Age of Heroes is long over, and basically, magic is nothing but a myth. Quite literally, a myth. The main character, whether you choose a boy or a girl, and their sister are parentless orphans living on the streets of a pre-industrial Bowerstone. You know, guns exist but steam trains don't. That kind of pre-industry. Lucian, the Lord of Bowerstone, has a family, a wife and a daughter that died decades ago. He decides to rebuild the Spire so he can harness its power to revive them. We buy a magical musical box that reveals we have hero blood in us. Except, it is not one of the 3 heroes he needs to control the Spire. We are the 4th. So naturally, he just decides to gank us. First he kills our sister, and then he shoots us. We fall through his big glass window and fall a few 100 feet. This is where Teresa shows up. Yes, that Teresa finds us and starts training us to be a hero. Now, I have to pause here. The Spire is this big magical MacGuffin that we only learn about now. In the ancient civilization, it was built by master mages from all over the world, and then the king of this civilization entered it. The Spire basically collects mana from all over the world and then focuses it to be used by whoever is at the center of it. No one knows what this king wished for. All we know is that he went in, and then the entire world of Albion was basically destroyed. All of that ancient civilization. And then we should also talk about Teresa. Yes, the hero's sister from the first game. Somehow she learned how to be immortal. The running theory is that she learned from Scythe, who we also speculate is the first ever hero to exist in Albion. You know, the one that probably killed the Archon, if the Archon is actually the evil guy. I really can't remember if the Archon was good or bad. And she has been keeping an eye on the family, making sure that there are always descendants. I want to be very clear here. Her version of taking care of the bloodline is just making sure there's another baby born. Not actually like, oh, you two are the literal last people in our bloodline. You're living on the literal streets without parents or even food. So let me take you to the caravan troop I live with. So yeah, I hate this version of Teresa. She's categorically an awful person. After the hero grows up and learns all of his powers, we get the main quest. Stop Lucian. To do this, we collect 3 heroes of each type, namely skill, strength and magic. Naturally, this means jack all as he captures them anyway, and before he can use the spires, we stop him. Also, he kills our dog and then we basically push him off a tall tower entirely in a cutscene. No big final boss fight, no theatrics really, just is dead. And then of course, naturally, Teresa goes into the Spire and takes full control of it. You see, for me the real villain of Fable 2 and 3 is Teresa. Quietly and slowly manipulating the heroes to ensure she becomes all powerful. Because basically that is what she becomes. In the Spire she can see everything, hear everything, and even grant wishes to those who she favors. And yes, that really is how Fable 2 basically ends. If you do the legwork, you buy every single building in the game, then you buy Lucian's old place, and then you become king or queen of all of Albion. Overall, this game had some interesting things happening in it. The lore really helped it along, since every time I replay it now, I get bored or frustrated with how it plays. First of all, the magic system is made just awful. You do not cast a spell at the level that you have it trained at. Instead, you have to hold the button to charge it up, which is not okay, especially after there are also more than half the amount of available spells, making the magic system in Fable 2 almost unusable, especially if you've maxed out your strength stats, which make you basically invulnerable anyway. Then they changed the skill section, which does refer to ranged weaponry. You see, there are no more bows or crossbows, instead you get guns and more guns. So if you get a really strong gun, you just whip that out and shoot, right? Except, even the strongest gun in the game takes 2 to 3 shots to defeat the most basic enemy when you are using auto-targeting, whereas the strength stat increases your strength enough to one-shot all basic enemies with ease. And then we need to talk about the big, naked, unarmored elephant in the room. This is the last thing I will mention gameplay-wise that they changed. In Fable 1, your armor determined a lot of things. How fast you moved and how much damage you took. In Fable 2, it does nothing. Even the few actual armor sets you can wear does nothing. It's just clothes that affect how bad or good you look to the sex you want to marry. So overall, a lessened experience that makes it significantly less fun to actually progress through the game. Of course, there are good things, like relationships mean a lot of things, and you can have a baby and eventually even a child. Your actions determine, but they don't determine anything. You can be as evil as you want and the game will still end the exact same way. So yeah, I think that's really the only thing I enjoyed. Oh yeah, there's one more thing. They're not main game mechanics, like jobs, decorating your house, romancing, finding areas to explore, and a few side quests were definitely unique and even funny. Nothing has yet beaten the experience of rebuilding Lady Grey body piece by body piece and then having her fall in love with me instead of the dude that wanted it to work on him. The reactions and everything for that quest is always brilliant and I do it just for the fun. But yeah, the main meat of the game seemed questionable at best. Now that I'm starting to look back at it, I still completed this game well over 4 times, but I also really don't want to do it again. This is still more than I can say for Fable 3 though. Listen, this is going to be short, because Fable 3 is what I imagine someone would make if I told them about Fable 2 without ever showing them anything. From the get-go, I had issues with this game. First of all, the damn hair. Fable is the only game series where the characters from the first game had better hair animation than the characters in the last game. And mind you, this released in freaking 2010, a year before Skyrim, and Skyrim's hair didn't look like a piece of clay on top of a character. And then we move on to the rest of the game. The magic got dumbed down, the leveling got dumbed down, the entire experience system was gutted and destroyed, to be honest. This to me is when Fable became less of an RPG and something that didn't know what it was. Your weapon choices became limited because they level and change with you, which on paper seems amazing, but in practice meant that if you switched weapons regularly, you'd actively have a worse weapon by the end of the game. So, you choose your weapons early on and then resolutely refuse to switch. And the story, yeah, that is set in stone from the start. You can be the worst performing person in this game and every beat happens the same. Your brother is a douche, you start a revolution, you move down from the top of the Albion map, get allies until you reach Power Stone. You get swept to the desert area, not Northville Glade, meet an evil entity that lives in ruins no one has ever heard about, and then you go back to the mainland. You dethrone your brother, you get an in-game here to prepare for the big bad evil guy, and then Walter, your mentor, gets killed to save Albion. Now, what changes can you affect? If you have money, less people in Albion die, and you can decide the general state of the world, like Industrial Wasteland or Green Utopia. And that is about it. The magic is now only a gauntlet that you put on your hands. You can combine spells, which yes, is awesome. It is still heavily streamlined to the point of being unrewarding. No one has a build they think is best in Fable 3, because we all have the exact same moveset since there are barely any movesets to choose from. This was also the straw that kind of started breaking the camel's back for me. Support for Fable 3 was very short-lived. Unlike predecessors, I found very little I can use to defend it. Nothing Fable 3 did was unique to the game. Not even the side quests were surprisingly unique. In fact, many felt cookie cutter from previous games. Only saving grace I can throw at all of you is that while character models are worse than they have ever been, the world looks absolutely stunning at times. For a game from 2010, there are environments in this game that look straight out of a more edgy Fortnite. Which sounds weird to say, but their art styles are remarkably similar. What's even more frustrating is that Fable 3 is a game that is easy to love by those who have never played a Fable game, but is extremely difficult to even stand if you grew up with Fable 1, which at this point was released less than 7 years ago. Also, Teresa is still there, and I absolutely hate her. Also, too long, didn't watch, look at the absolutely stunning environment we got for the traveling caravan crew. Genuinely, I've always loved this place, and I have found that many modern fantasy RPG games tend to look much darker and more depressing than this. However, In Fable 3, we got to enjoy an entire area that genuinely looked fantastical. So what am I saying in this video? Am I just complaining about Fable as a whole? No. In fact, I still love the Fable games, and I was jumping and hollering from the very first moment of the teaser trailer for the new Fable. I mean, they literally show the guild seal within a few seconds of it starting, and I'm guessing very few people recognize that guild symbol on the hilt of that sword. I love these games. They were and are an integral part of how I interact with the world of gaming. But it is important for all of us to understand, even when looking around all the rough edges, that Fable 1, 2 and 3 were still extremely rough. None of them, even 2 decades after release, feel like complete games. Stories are half told, characters react weirdly, and the games feel empty at times and full at others. And from what we have seen, Playground Games has somehow understood what the soul of the games are without taking in all the bad stuff. I have no idea what the new game will be like, but what I do know is that the few glimpses we have received are telling a grand story, but are doing so with so much tongue-in-cheek humor that it seems like a fun experience to just play this game for a few hours. But that all being said, I would like to still see a complicated skill system, a full relationship system, and most importantly for the nerd in me, so much lore and history to the world of Albion that more than half of my playthrough is spent reading it all just to understand what I am doing. As with all 3 previous games, Fable has so much potential, and you could always feel it when playing all the games. If nothing else, if the newest Fable properly realizes all of its potential, it may very well be the new way we define what a Fable is. Thanks for watching.